welcome to the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dionne, and this is episode 43. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for the continued support. For today's episode, I have Christopher Leyva of the band The Falling Doves. The Falling Doves are currently out on a European tour, but before they hit the road, I had the chance to catch up with their frontman and ask them all about their upcoming album, Skylark 69, which is set for release on May 26th. So here's Christopher Leyva of The Falling Doves. All right, if I knew absolutely nothing about The Falling Doves, how would you describe the band's music to me?
It's a mixture of garage rock with that classic rock and roll stadium rock that you grew up to, listen to from bands like Kiss, Motley Crue, and all of that.
Oh, I definitely say there's a glam aspect to it, listening to your latest album, Skylark 69. Before we get into the album, where and when did the band form?
The band got started in England, in London in 2013. We were out there I was actually, a lot of us artists do these little artistic mental clearance hiatuses when we get to a certain point in our career where, we hit a wall, because then everything becomes repetitive and monotonous. I was out there working on some stuff, and I was dealing with an indie label out there, and we were going to go solo. They were going to promote that, but they were saying that it was going to be harder to promote and market me as a solo artist. So we decided to work, going back in the studio, going through catalog of my songs, and then me going in the studio and redrafting and rehashing them. We always have songs that we feel never got the love they needed, or they just didn't have the proper interpretation because either A, your musicianship or your singing wasn't where it needed to be, but the songs were great. Put out that album in England, came back here to Hollywood, put an actual band together, and that's the story of The Falling Doves.
Awesome. And on May 26th, your new album, Skylark 69, comes out on Pacific Records in the US and RMN in the UK. If you want to talk a little bit about the singles you've released from the album, we can start with Be My Love.
Be My Lover. So we in the height of the pandemic, I was working with Warm Audio Records, or Warm Audio Studios. They make microphones and stuff. We were working on creating an album for their music library. Okay, so this was things that we're going to use for commercials, things that we're going to use for advertisements. But it wasn't really based on the band, if that makes any sense. It was supposed to be just a music library of cool songs they could play with. That's what it was supposed to be at. I found out some weird things that they were going to try to do, which that's what people always do. And I found out that they were trying to basically take those songs and sell them. So I get this horrible call from this guy just talking trash about the songs, horrible that they weren't good. And I'm all, wow, this is the first time I've ever gotten like a comment about the songs, because the structure, the production, the songwriting, everything was where it needed to be for commercial aspect. So I told the guy, well, okay, give me till Monday and we'll see where we're at. So I took all those songs called Pacific Records, and we've been talking about working together. I go, hi, I got an album that you guys might dig. Check it out, and if you like it. And the guy goes, oh, we really like it. Well, this is awesome. I go, that's what I wanted to hear. I go, the album's yours. I go, just send me the paperwork. I'll sign everything. And then on Monday, when Warm Audio called, they're like, well, we might want to use one of those songs. I go, it's too late, man. You're going to have to license them through Pacific Records now. It's their songs. And that's how the album came out. That's the truth. I wish there was more suffering and intention. And so anyways, Pacific decided to put out, and that's the thing. So Pacific decided to put out the single Be My Lover. And in the middle of the pandemic. And, the thing is, us as musicians, our main goal is to create hope, create awareness, create an escape, just like when you go to the movies from the terrible things that we all went through in different phases through the pandemic. Everybody was affected differently. We went forward to shoot a music video. I remember the whole city of Los Angeles was empty, as you remember in your own streets, in your own hometown. And we couldn't even get a videographer to come out because they were so afraid of getting the bug, And I had already gotten the coronavirus in Japan on my way back from my last tour. So I had done my 2 months illness before it got even announced, you know? I was like, well, you know, whatever. I don't think I'm going to get sick. So we went out, shot the music video in a convertible through LA, turned it around. We were going to get an opportunity like that again, as you know how LA is with cars. And the music video's out, it got created, and it made people so happy. So that's how it all worked out, my brother. And we were able to give up a lot of people hope, awareness around the globe, because it was a global time where we were all feeling and going through similar things, and everybody was locked in. So to see the freedom of the band in a car with California, going down the freeway, going down the streets, just brought people a little escape, even if it was for a few minutes, man, from whatever they were dealing with. So I feel like we succeeded with why this album happened.
All right, so I wanted to go back a little bit to the licensing thing. Had you done music this way before, where you've just composed it for commercial use and stuff like that, rather than as a musical project?
You know, it's silly the things people want you to do, but I've learned my lesson through other friends. Thank God, to always either A, get the money up front, or B, protect the catalog, because you got to kind of sniff when things are going to go bad, and you got to be right up ahead, one step of the game. So yeah, I've done a lot of these things before. I've written for other artists, written for other musicians, and it's sad how terrible these things can be sometimes, man. But you can't get. This is the thing: is you can't get mad. You can't, because then you start growing resentful. You're not this happy-go-lucky character that always goes, cool, let's try it, you know, because then you're like, I have a lot of friends, man, in the industry, a lot of amazing songwriters, producers, engineers, people that have been on many sitcoms, you know, the guys that recorded the theme song for Friends and Rembrandts, good mentors, man, that I've had over the years. And a lot of them follow this format when they get burnt out with all the screwing over in this industry, even from band members themselves. But so, you know, then I took it upon myself as a 20-year-old to, in tandem with becoming a songwriter, to working as a music industry person, you know what I mean? Get to know all the different terminologies. And it's a never ending thing, you know, there's so many fields to learn, from publishing to licensing to producing to PR to booking, engineering, you know what I mean? And I feel like the more you understand the monster, the more you can kind of prepare for the worst. But people are still going to be people, you know how it is, and everybody's always trying to undercut each other. I mean, as funny as it sounds, that's what the whole music industry has always been from day one. Look at Elvis and the Colonel.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about your second single, Shotgun.
That, you know, and so amongst all these things, when you're doing these projects, you get these cool songs that, regardless of, even if you're just making, I call it like a McDonald's order, by default, you get good at crafting as a writer, good lyrical stuff. No matter what, there's going to be something that's happening within you anyways, that's going to come into the song, you know, whatever you're dealing with. It was easy. I was going through some personal stuff, situations and chaos, but it was the funniest thing, man. During the whole pandemic, I had so many opportunities, so many blessings at the beginning of it, that I could not complain. Even though I was going through a lot of personal issues, you know, with relationships, I still had like 95% of everything doing good, 5% bad, which was, you know, the relationships. I couldn't really complain, because I'd really be some jerk to really complain. And so I had the song, and I go, well, you know, like I said, since we were talking about like doing a library, literally the Warm Audio goes, well, we want one song that's like a Tom Petty song like this. We want this one that's like Black Rebel Motorcycle Club like this. We want one like this. We want one like that. And it's the first time I had time to sit down and go, cool, fuck it, let's see what we can do. And Shotgun was supposed to be kind of like the Wallflowers meets Tom Petty, which are two bands I really, really love. And that's what you get with Shotgun.
So the album as a whole, Skylark 69, to me, it seems like a concept album. It could be a concept album. You mentioned the bad relationships. It seems like, to me, someone's hopping in the car and getting away from a bad relationship throughout the whole album.
That's it. What you said that got me really excited the other day. I was I had this dream about the fucking sorry to cuss, but about the album coming out, right? I had this dream, and in the dream, I was literally telling the band members to get it. I was driving the car on the cover, which is it's a Skylark album, which again, it all happened in tandem by creativity. That was never supposed to be the title of the album, but since that was the car we drove around for the music video, I go, that gives it hope. When you see that damn car, I want people to be like, get in the car, let's go. You know what I mean? That was the theme of it. So yeah, I'm so glad that you said that, because that's the celebration. Get in, loser. Let's go somewhere cool. We've all had that friend in our life, that always, took us when we were having a crappy day. They just showed up at the right time, and that's what I wanted the album to end up being, and that's kind of what it had. We all need, especially even right now with the war ball game, we all need that element of hope and to resonate more along the lines. So I think us as creators, we have that responsibility to give people an escape without avoiding necessarily, what's going on with the world, but saying, hey, the world's going to shit. Let's go for a cool ride somewhere down the highway.
Do you own that 69 Skylark?
No, it's the girl from the music video. So this is what ends up happening. So we had the car, we had the videographer for that music video, and the girl that owns the car that was going to be the model. Well, the funny part about the whole thing is the original model canceled because of the pandemic. The videographer canceled because of that. I think a relative of hers had just passed and gave her this car. So me being in old Ferris Bueller fashion, I go, well, let's take that car out. That sounds like a great idea. Wouldn't it be fun to be in the video and you're the model now? Well, I don't even know how to drive it. I go, oh, we'll figure it out, And that's how that worked out. Yeah.
Producing the album is Chris Bolster. Had you worked with Chris before?
Not this album. Chris Bolster produced Liverpool, which is the album. So after this album got done, I took off back to England and got stuck out there during the pandemic, the second part of the pandemic, because it was like a 3-part series. Second part, I got stuck over there and I got another little budget. So then I go, well, let's go to Abbey Road and see what that's all about, So we had just signed a deal with this other company in Mexico. So I used those connections to get a hold of the Sony, you know what I mean, over there. And they made a call for me to be able to go work in Abbey Road on a record. And they got me. Well, and you know what's funny is you still have to audition for these people like the Beatles did with George Martin. So he had to accept us, and I wanted him because he's done all the remasters and remixes of the Beatles. He's done Oasis. He's done Radiohead. I mean, a lot of really cool indie bands that I really like. He's been behind all the projects, working with McCartney on a bunch of stuff, the Smiths, that type of ballgame. So that's the guy that did that album. But that album's not out yet because we have to kind of push everything. We're about a year and a half in releases behind on everything because of the pandemic. So Skylark was supposed to come out last year, but because it was such a special record, I told the guy, you know what, man, let's just wait till things start chilling out. Let's take it out in 2022. And here it is.
So I went on iTunes to check out your catalog, and a lot of it says it was released this year. So I'm wondering what's going on with that.
So, like I was telling you, there were so many projects that were in tandem that were supposed to be released in different parts of the world with different labels. And everything started kind of getting like, it got to a point where I couldn't hold any of the releases back anymore. So everything came out this year, you know what I mean? And there's still another 10 records that were still like, let's let these breathe a little bit before we let the next 10 come out. So probably next year, January, another 15 records are going to be released,
You're starting your Double Vision 2022 tour soon. Have you toured before this, after the lockdowns?
This would have been our third world tour. And it's world because we cover a lot of ground, you know what I mean, for an independent band. During the pandemic, we had literally completed the I would say 75% of the Electric Dove World Tour. And right as we were finishing Australia, we were in Hawaii, as it was our stopping point. to change over. We're just gonna hop over to Cali, swap out guitars, swap out gear, and head over to Japan. And then the pandemic hit, so we got grounded. You know what I mean? So this would be our fourth world tour like that, where we go to Japan, Norway, Europe, Latin America. We were gonna go to Ukraine on the original Electric Dove World Tour. Of course, you see how bad things are with Ukraine now.
You've done past tours with Cheap Trick, Echo and the Bunnymen, Peter Murphy, Fastball, Gilby Clarke. These are all kind of different genres. Is that kind of something you like to kind of gravitate towards? Because I really would say you're multiple genres with the Falling Doves.
We're a rock and roll band, man. You know, this is the thing about it. So if you really get down to the nitty gritty of it, the music's upbeat, kind of like a Cheap Trick type of thing, right? You know, very upbeat, very poppy, very glossy. You know what I mean? But the lyrical content has always been very dark. You know, so that's where you get in your Echo and the Bunnymen, your Pete, Peter Murphy's, your Bauhaus type of stuff. But the guitar work has always been very loyal to we're a guitar band, man. You know, we love our Guns N' Roses, we love our Shredders, you know, our Zeppelins, our AC/DC. You know, with those, we really are a conglomerate. We're not really necessarily 4 or 5 different genres. We're just 5 different things creating this beautiful mix of rock and roll that we create.
Do you have any interesting stories of touring with any of those artists?
Like they always say, not to meet your people, you know. But let's see. The coolest one, you know, the thing about these people, okay, so you can grow relationships with them on the road, but off the road you don't exist to them ever again. You know what I mean? Doesn't matter how much fun stuff you did, they're gone. You know. Probably the coolest guy was Ian from Echo and the Bunnymen. Probably fucking fun dude, rad dude. We had a ball, we had a blast just hanging out, and it's just very, very smart conversations after the shows, very intellectual conversations, you know, hanging out. And then of course the groupies would come in, so then he'd disappear again, you know. But that was probably, out of all those people, the most open to conversate level with you and just hang out, you know what I mean? Of course, the other cats like Cheap Trick, they're older, they've done it, they've been there, they're cleaned up. And so it's more like hanging out with like, you still feel like a kid, you know? So like, they make you feel like a kid too, to them, you know? You know, you feel like a kid in a Victorian house, like, you know, like you can be seen but not heard type of thing.
You list among your mentors Pete Best, original drummer for the Beatles. How did you meet Pete?
We were working on a documentary in Liverpool about the Beatles' trip from from Liverpool to Hamburg. And so when I told the documentarian, I go, well, why not fucking go to the person that was there and go see if we can get him to play with us? You know, at least there'll be a good cameo to come play with us at the Cavern before we take off to Hamburg. Maybe with a little bit of luck, he might come with us. So we went all over Liverpool to look for him. We ended up at his house, knocked on the door, left a note, didn't answer, didn't email, didn't write back. 6 months later go by. We did the tour to Hamburg, this and that. And we came back. We did meet some people that the Beatles hung out with, so they helped us kind of recreate some of those iconic cities and moments. We played up there in Hamburg, and on the return, it's funny because, you know, since we couldn't base it with Pete, we based it on Stuart Sutcliffe, the original bassist of the band. And so we used him like a spiritual guide, I guess, during the trip. We had all these journals of his that we were reading about, you know, so it helped us get into character, you know, kind of like an actor. And we finished the tour, you know, we all ended up sitting down at the Hara Cafe in London. And I remember we were just wondering whatever happened to the bass that he used to play with the Beatles. And that's it. You know, we were about to leave. We're eating, and we're all saying goodbye because one dude's taking off with some German girl he met in Germany back. Drummer's going back home with his girlfriend. The bass player at the time went back to Liverpool. And it was just me sitting there. And I remember asking the person there at the restaurant, I go, is there any Beatle memorabilia here? He's like, oh, we got a whole vault coming out, man. We just got a few pieces. So we walk into this room. And he's like, "Oh, we got that thing. I'm not sure if it's even one of theirs or not." And it was the bass from Stewart. So that was amazing, man. Then I went home, and when I landed, I had a message from Pete, and that's how we linked up. And he came out, played my birthday party. Then we've been going back and forth, and another unusual mix. But what I can say is the man can play rock and roll. The man can play drums, and if he can play with us, either A, we're a shitty band, or B, you know what I mean? We're all crazy.
So where can I find this documentary?
The girl in the company that we're doing it got into like a fight, so they didn't really. I don't even know where it's at in the legal thing. We shot it. We did our part. I do have footage of the concerts and the places, and that's the best part. You know how these things go. Maybe 10 years down the road, somebody will release it. At this point, I only have the footage from the concerts.
You say you're also mentored by Scott Weiland, Stone Temple Pilots. How did you meet Scott?
So there's a company called, what did it say? How flexible we are with I guess we can say things. Okay, so there was a company called Sunset Sessions, right? That used to do music licensing parties. That's what it was. And there was a licensing party here in San Diego that I got invited to. Now I got brought in there. Like, again, like I said, when you're one of the bands that are first starting out, they look at you like the dirty kid in leather, I was like, okay, like, cool, you're part of this, but you're not really like part of this, but you are, but we're playing the show at the Belly Up in San Diego. Now, this is a private party for licensing and music moguls. And it's basically like a week where they bring in all these stars that are bringing their music out to get listened to. You get your Jason Mrazes, you get this dude, a bunch of different dudes to just play their singles. And these radio promoters and radio program directors listen to it to see if they're gonna use it on their programs or whatever that thing's called. And so now we're there. We're playing with He had done an incredible acoustic show earlier that day, right? And now he was playing the band performance version of the album, and he wasn't coming out on stage, and the promoter's freaking the fuck out, like he's losing it. And then she comes up to me and she goes, you're from Hollywood? She's like, what's going on? Can you just go talk to him? I go, I mean, I met him earlier. I go, but I don't know him. What am I, do you think we just all know each other? It's like, yeah, go on, So I go backstage, I talk to the tour manager, go, what's going on, man, He takes me outside. It's like, I need you to level with you. He's like, I've seen you around, blah, blah, blah. So I can level with you. At this point, Scott had he had like a Michael Jackson type of doctor that went everywhere with him with medicines and pills, and brought him up and brought him down just to be able to regulate. Because when people have a lot of addictions, they need to be able to, they almost need someone like this, some dude like this, to be able to fully function in an environment. They need these Michael Jackson doctors that pump them up with drugs so they can look normal to you and me, but really they're dosed off in a bunch of different like medical substances, but clinical things. And the guy goes, dude, I really need to get fucking Scott some blow. And I was like, oh man. I go, listen, I know how this works out. And my old tour manager was responsible for, he wasn't responsible, but he was in a way in tandem responsible for John Edwinstall's death at the Hard Rock. You know what I mean? So I go, I don't know if I would want this in my conscience if I went and made some calls for you and he fucking died. I go, so, I would be directly responsible for the demise of Scott. But in that consensus, he's going to do it anyways. I go, okay, let's see what we can do. So I bring my buddy, the tour manager of Pantera that was there. I ring him up. He comes down. I go, listen, this is more your field, man. Let's bring it in here and see what we can do. So they went in there, went and visited. Do you remember the director, Mel Brooks? This is Mel Brooks's neighbor, who's a drug dealer that lived by the venue. Came down with a little bag of cocaine about this big. And then he brings it back to Scott. Went up there, finished the performance, and then Scott stayed friends. And he said, listen, if you ever need any help or anything like that, just hit me up and I'll hook you up. I'll take care of you. And so he set us up with that producer, and just for the album Doves of War, and helped us just kind of shape, the sounds and themes. But he never got to see what we were creating because he died. But that's the story of Scott Weiland.
Yeah, it's a great story, actually. Interesting to hear kind of the behind the scenes stuff you only picture in your head going on, but if you're outside the industry. But obviously it's quite common for someone like you that's inside the industry.
Yeah, and I wrote a song in there as a tribute to him called Cocaine Jane.
You're also a member of the Grammy Academy. How does one become a member of that?
It's interesting because originally I was a venue owner, and I used to promote Latin rock concerts from Mexico or Europe or whatever. They bring in Latin artists and promoted them here in the United States, but national ones, not indie ones, well-known ones already with some type of certification, RIAA certification is what they call it. And I was routing them and moving them and making a good living doing those concerts. So I applied as a professional member first. And due to the amount of concerts I had, kind of like Bill Graham type of thing, they accepted me. And once I was in there, I still reapplied as an artist. So due to the amount of recordings and songs that I have, prolific, writer, they brought me in there now as a writer. But that's how one becomes there. You just go on the website, you find your terms, you either A, get a professional recommendation through a respected member of the industry, or B, you go through the different panels and just try to see if you qualify.
Rock and roll isn't really recognized much, I think, by the Grammys, or at least fairly. So I think it's a little ironic that you are a member of the Academy. It seems like it seems like the majority of the Academy doesn't really follow rock and roll or heavy metal.
They stopped a long time ago. Now we do have a pre-Grammy, a pre-telecast that happens prior to the Grammys, right? And what's cool about that, nobody sees that part, but that's the part where they do all the rock and roll, like releases, albums, compilations, box sets, that type of thing goes on there. I mean, we still have a few icons there, but really they're icons, you get your McCartneys, your Foo Fighters, that type of stuff. But what about, your Black Keys and that type of thing, So, but it's there and they get love and they get recognition, just not on television or through media and PR, but they do get there's so many rock and roll Grammys that still get given out. But they give them out, they only televise, all the top 40 stuff like hip hop and, rap and that type of gig.
Yeah, I enjoyed when they gave Megadeth their Grammy and they played Enter Sandman as Dave came down to accept the award on one of the pre-shows.
I was there for that. That was so much fun, man.
Well, at least Dave had a sense of humor about it.
Yeah.
Do you have any other projects going on right now besides the Falling Doves?
No, there's no time, man. There's so many releases still up to come in. I mean, the tour has got me doing cool things with yourself, people like yourself in the media. And just since I'm still, head up operations on this stuff, I really have to, let me check the time. Okay. I have to really designate my time accordingly based on productivity and what makes sense for the band, the brand. And I'm not 22 years old anymore. So every month, every year, every day counts. And I have to make sure that it's accounted for. Does that make sense? It's like gold, man.
Absolutely. Those are all the questions I have for you today, Chris. I want to wish you the best of luck on the new album, Skylark 69. Comes out May 26th on Pacific Records in the US, RMN in the UK. And thanks for coming on the Rockish George podcast.
Thank you, George. And I really appreciate it, man. I appreciate your questions too, man. And I hope to see this a little bit down the road. And everybody stay out happy, making rock and roll.
Once again, I want to thank Christopher Leyva of the Falling Doves for coming on the Rockish George podcast. Be on the lookout for their upcoming album, Skylark 69, out on May 26th. Stop by, give it a stream. If you like what you hear, go out, buy a physical copy. Make sure you're supporting the artist. As was mentioned in the interview, the Falling Doves have put out a bunch of music during the lockdown, so head over there, check that out as well. For all things Falling Doves, check out fallingdoves.com. I also want to thank Dave Teeter of Headfirst Entertainment for making this interview possible. You've been great. I've been George Dionne, and I'll see you again soon.